From Anshe Sfar Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Vayishlach, Birthing a New World. We all know that at the beginning of the Torah, in the story of Adam and Eve, it says, Pru urvu, be fruitful and multiply. It's a mitzvah of having children. And it's told to Adam and Eve, as one of the species, also the animals, the birds, the fish, were all told, Pru urvu, be fruitful and multiply. As commentators point out, when it came to human beings, it was more of a mitzvah. They may have actually heard it from God. When it came to the animals, it was just an inherent thing that they were built to have children. However, this mitzvah of Pru urvu is also repeated in the story of Noach, because after all, it was a new world. So when there was a new world, there was a need to tell them they have to be fruitful and multiply again. So Noach was told to be fruitful and multiply. It's part of the 7 laws of Noah, so to speak. However, what may surprise us more is that in this week's Parsha Vayishlach, Yaakov is told, pray or ve. It's in the singular rather than the plural, but he's told, be fruitful and multiply. He says, Goyu kahal goyim yemimeka. A nation, a congregation of nations will be from you, and kings will come forth from your loins. And this land will go to you, etc. So the question is, what do you mean be fruitful and multiply? Yaakov already had 12 sons and 1 daughter in last week's Parsha. And the Midrash Haggadah asked this question. Secondly, you don't need to be told to be fruitful and multiply. We have the mitzvah from Adam and Eve. My son, Tani Finkelstein, wanted to suggest that this is proof of the notion that when it comes to Pru urvu, when it comes to the being fruitful and multiply in the Jewish terms, rather than sort of universal terms, the mitzvah for the Jews, which is the basic mitzvah, is to not only have children, but to educate them and to raise them the way of the Torah as well. The Radak says as much. He says, Pru urvu, what does it mean, Pru urvu? Pru means to be fruitful, like the word peri, perot, and revu means harviyah is hagdalah. Lerabot can also be to mature. Help mature them, help grow them, help them grow older, help them raise them, to raise the children. If you just have a child, it may not be the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to raise the children. The Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says something similar, that it's not enough to simply have the child. The natural process of having a child, that's not enough. He says, if they don't help the child and raise the child and engage with the child, then it's not going to happen. There are a lot of interesting proofs to the idea that Peri Rivya, that being fruitful and multiply in Jewish terms, involves having righteous and proper children. Most striking example that I saw that Tani pointed out to me was the Gemara in Yevamos Daf Samach Beis and Beis, the Gemara in Yevamos 62b. There the Gemara talks about not the mitzvah of having children, but the mitzvah of continuing to have children. Even if you had children when you were younger, says the Gemara, you should continue having children when you get older. If you married a woman when you were younger, somehow marriage came to an end, you should marry another woman as you get older. Why? So they quote a pasuk in Koheles. The pasuk says, plant your seeds in the morning, and then in the evening plant again, because you don't know which one will come to fruition, this one or that one. So if you take the application to children, he says, we better have a lot of children. You don't know what's going to happen. We have a congregant in our congregation, Mr. Weinreich. He's one of 9 children. Wonderful. His parents had a lot of children, very fruitful. But they all died in the Holocaust, except for him. So if they didn't have 9 children, who knows? Maybe they would have no children. So plant many children. You never know what will happen. Says Rashi, not just you don't know umit kayem, whether the child will survive, as in the case of Mr. Weinreich's siblings, but also Eza zera yehagun v'yarei shamayim umit kayem. Rashi says, you don't know which child will be fit, appropriate, be a type of child you might want to have, and yirei shamayim, and it will be one who fears heaven. That, in other words, it's not enough that you just had children. You want to have children, the kind of children who are fearful of heaven. And therefore, when we look at this pasuk and we ask, why is this mitzvah of having children and being fruitful and multiply, why is it repeated regarding Yaakov? Because the mitzvah takes on a new identity. when the Jewish people came into being. It wasn't just a matter of having biological children. So and so lives so many years, and they begot so and so. So and so lived so many years, and they begot so and so. That's what life would be like if you didn't have this Jewish idea of the education, of the raising them in a certain tradition. And therefore, the verse reads like this: "Be fruitful and multiply, and have children. Raise the children to be proper, Yirei Shamayim, fearful of heaven, and you'll have a special congregation. Malachim milchatzecha yitzeu. Kings will come from you." The goal is to have special kind of children, to have children that have an influence on life. That they say man malchi rabbanan. You can have children who are rabbis, children who are doctors, children who play a role in helping others, and in doing the mitzvos and keeping the mitzvahs. They're hagun, they're proper, and they're fit. But then we ask, okay, so when the Jewish people came into being, there was a new mitzvah of being fruitful and multiply. It had a new identity. Now it's just not just biological. That's right. Salvation explains in the book Family Redeemed. The whole notion of the biological production of children became a mitzvah. It became elevated to something else. It was about raising children, not just having the children. But why here? Why here, particularly in the story of Yaakov, does it say pru or vu? Again, we appreciated it with regard to Adam. We appreciate it with regards to Noah. That was a new world. But what about here? I think what Hashem is saying, what the Parsha is saying, is that as Yaakov comes mipadan Aram, he comes from his father-in-law there in Haran, and he comes back to Israel to establish a footprint in Israel for the 12 tribes, for once and for all, that the 12 sons of Israel, they live in Israel, they come back to Israel, even though they're going to go to Egypt, but this is the establishment of the 12 tribes taking root in the land of Israel. As they're about to do that, it's a new world. It's a new world. It's a world where he's going to strive through this family to have melachim, to have princes. He's going to strive to have, a Naphtali who's so swift on his feet, a Zvulun who's good at marketing out on the high seas. He's going to have a Issachar who's a hard worker and learns Torah. He's going to have a Judah who's capable of leadership. These are the 12 tribes of Israel. It's going to be different. There's the parenting will be more serious. Parenting will be about trying to raise a certain type of child. There'll be a certain tradition, and they'll try to transmit that from generation to generation. There'll be values, and they'll try to transmit them from generation to generation. And therefore, it's a new world. It requires a new mitzvah of pru or vu, or in this case, pray or ve. Be fruitful and multiply in this special kind of way, in this way in which the fruitfulness is not just a function of how many children there are, but also, as Rashi says, are they hagunim? Are they fit? Are they appropriate? Are they yirei shamayim? Do they fear heaven? Do they understand the values of those who came before? That's the ultimate goal. There's one more proof. The Gemara talks about Chizkiah. Hamelach Chizkiah said, "I don't want to have children. I may have children like Menashe." So the prophet Isaiah, Yeshayahu, he said to him, "Look, what are you getting involved? God will decide whether your child will be righteous or not righteous." So you could say, "Oh, you see, the prophet told him to have children, whether they're righteous or not righteous." Yes, but what was Chizkiah thinking? Chizkiah said, "Look, if you want me to be fruitful and multiply, you want me to have children. You're complaining, Yeshayahu, that I didn't have any children yet." He says, "You want me to have children? I have a hunch that my child's going to be Menashe. He's going to be the worst king of Israel ever, the most wicked possible person ever." So what is Chizkiah saying? Chizkiah is saying, if I can't carry on the tradition, then what kind of child is it? So what's Yeshayahu saying? Yeshayahu said to him, "Look, it's true. The mitzvah of pray Reveh, is to have a righteous child. But when there's a child, there could be another child. There could be a grandchild, and a great-grandchild, and a great-great-grandchild. And that one could be the Mashiach himself. That could be the Mashiach. So pray Reveh, be fruitful and multiply. You never know what will come from it. It's a new world. And in this new world, there's great hope for the future if we can try to transmit those values from generation to generation. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfard Beth Elameth Congregation for our discussion of the Parsha and various holidays. And thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.